This segment of the CU podcast is sponsored by Skillshare, and we hope you'll make 2020 a year to explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity with Skillshare's online classes. Skillshare is an online learning community offering thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, and more. There's a ton to explore, real projects to create, and you always have the support of your fellow creatives helping you along the way. It'll empower you to accomplish real growth. Skillshare offers classes designed for real life so you can move your creative journey forward without putting life on hold. You can learn and grow with short classes that fit your busy routine. There's all sorts of things Skillshare covers. Say video games are your interest. There's courses on pixel art, soundtrack composition, and story writing for interactive formats. So you can cover everything there. Yeah, I mean, you think of it, it's on there. I personally took Think Like a Chef by Kenny Monroe. I've been really into cooking again. It was always a lifelong passion, and last year I picked it back up, and it was good to sit down and have a refresher on things like what you should have in your pantry for your basics.
Utensils.
The spices and things that everyone wants that you should have there. Farmer's market etiquette, things like that. Skillshare is also incredibly affordable. It's about $10 a month if you do an annual membership. That's less than, a video streaming service. And you're getting something out of this. You're learning something here.
Click the link in the description to get 2 free months of premium membership and explore your creativity.
That's 2 months of premium access. You get all the benefits any normal member would, and it's free. You can do a lot of learning in those 2 months.
Again, to join Skillshare now and take the next step in your creative journey, go ahead and click on the link in the description below. All right, we have a Patreon poll topic. Ian, how do you
Patreon.com/CU podcast. Exchange money for services.
Exchange money for services rendered?
Yes.
Is your service going to be a writing?
Yep.
Hopefully today or tomorrow?
Yep.
Let's see. So let's see. In third place on the Patreon poll that you can vote on each week, this is number 193. In third place at 21%, The State of Amiibo Collecting 5 years in. In second place, this is a close second and first place. Favorite retro PC games, 36%. And first place, A Tale from Pat's Childhood.
Ooh, I got a Charlie horse. Hold on.
Charlie horse?
Yep, 1 second.
You got an ornery Charlie horse?
Yeah. All right.
Want to put some balm on there?
Go for it.
CBD cream I got?
Go for it.
Okay, so originally I thought about
Take it away.
a more somber tale from Pat's childhood. But you know what? I'll do the happier one, and I'll expand upon the guy on my street named Scott growing up.
Scotty.
Scott, red-haired Scott, fiery redhead Scott.
Old Scotty Two Shoes.
Was about 4 years older than me, the same age as my sister, growing up on the block. So Scott was, I brought him up briefly on the show before. He was like not the nicest guy, but he wasn't an asshole. He was just a little rough. He was a rough, you're talking like these people that are 14, 15 years old.
Yeah, a little scrappy, figuring himself out.
Scrappy. He probably comes from a household that was a little broken, and your testosterone hits, and he was a kid that. We played street hockey. I was a street hockey kid. We had a cul-de-sac right there, which creates like a perfect street hockey arena.
Haven.
Especially when one side was the backyard fence. So on one side, basically used as the boards. It was great.
Right.
And yes, when you played, maybe Scott would be a little bit more rough with you sometimes. Maybe he shouldn't because you're 4 years younger, and 4 years when you're 10 to 14 is like a man to
Big
a baby.
deal. Yeah.
There. But he wasn't malicious when it came to it. And so I was the youngest boy in the block. And that's tough growing up, being the youngest boy. Because even if you befriend the kids that are 2, 3, 4 years older, they can turn on you and be an asshole at a moment's notice, and they're physically twice as strong as you.
Right.
When you're 10 versus 13 and 14. They're like twice as strong. So Scott was good in the fact that he wasn't one of those, he would never bully you. He never had a bad day and bully you.
Right.
And he stood up for me sometimes, even though we weren't close. He recognized that, hey, it might be rough being this kid. Maybe that had something to do with his upbringing, because he did it. I think he moved there after I was probably like 7, 8, or 9. He wasn't there when I was like very, very young, if I remember correctly. He had a good sense of humor, but he stood up for me like a few times. This is even before he did briefly, I think, date my sister when my sister was like probably like 14 years old or 15. I was like 10 or 11. But he stood up for me a few times. And before I get into that, this is the type of person Scott was. He was a semi-criminal. I brought this up before.
Yes.
He was a guy that was like, yeah, hey Scott, how come you got that new Calgary Flames jersey on? And then the next week you have a St. Louis Blues sweater, which by the way is my favorite logo of any team.
St. Louis Blues
with a note there. He would go with the other guy on the block, Mark, who was a little bit slow, older, but nice. He wasn't like a bully. Had a wicked slap shot. He swung like a fucking sword, and that's why you had to have your hockey pads on. Your was it Milek white pads? Was it Milek or Myler? Milek. Anyway, so they would go to Herman Sporting Goods. Remember Herman Sporting Goods? That was a regional thing. Herman's.
I don't remember Herman's. No,
it was, but there was no Sports Authority yet. There was no, maybe there was Modell's, which was semi-regional. So Herman Sporting Goods was like your mall big sports shop. They would go to Herman's, and they would in the winter they would wear their oversized winter jackets and do the old
switcheroo.
No, do the old tuck under your winter jacket with like we're talking these were $60 or $80 back in the early 90s. These weren't cheap back then. Hockey sweaters. They would steal. They were shoplifters.
Yes.
I mean, they weren't physically violent crimes, but there was still criminality involved. You weren't scared of people that did those crimes, but they did it. And every week they had a new jersey, a nice shiny new white Ranger sweater one week. Because Scott was a Rangers fan and so was I. Dumb Billy was a Devils fan. Won't get into that.
Dumb Billy.
But he stood up for me a couple of times. So Dumb Billy was the kid that I hung out with the most because he was only 2 years older, and that's a much smaller sort of. And Billy's the one I play street tennis against, and we did street football more or less with him.
Street tennis.
Hey, we had some wicked street tennis games. We went 3 sets on those street tennis games. But Billy could be a little bit of a jerk sometimes. Because he had his family was ultra Catholic. I mean, his father was an ordained deacon, there, which is the highest you can get before being a priest in the Catholic faith there. And they were very, they had the statue of Mary on their front lawn.
Oh, okay. They were into
they're ultra Catholics,
right?
I mean, I went to church every Sunday, so did my mom. But come on, we had limits there. So Billy, there was some yelling going on in the house. The mom was a little bit mean. The daughter was a little bit catty as well because of that. So it was a winter one time where it was probably like a Saturday or Friday night where everyone was hanging around the block. We had a cul-de-sac, and like before the cul-de-sac was another sort of circular area. So there was like congregation areas where no cars would come by.
Yeah.
Hangout spots. And we were all just hanging out there, and Billy, I think it was around Easter, but it was still cold, and this is why. I remember Billy eating a lot of chocolate, candy, and then spitting it out because I think he was allergic to chocolate, but still ate it. He was one of those type of people, like, I'll do something I shouldn't do, but still do it. And then I was a little wise ass a little bit, even at 10, believe it or not, even though, I was thick but quick. So everyone was there. All the girls in the block, which was like probably 5 or 6 was a family, a nice family. There was like literally 5 girls in that family. And so like 3 of them were hanging out. They're all like a couple years apart there. My sister was there. Scott was there. Billy, again, I was the youngest boy by like 3-4 years on average there. And so I remember Billy was spitting out all this chocolate, and it was so cold that I remember that there was like puddles near the curbs and that it was like semi-frozen, but you could still get in there. And so I remember I said something to Billy. I don't remember what. I said something to Billy he didn't like, and it was in front of everyone who must have left. He pushed me into the puddle, which was probably like 30 degrees at the time.
What a jerk.
And I was only like 9 or 10, and I probably cried a little bit at the time. So he pushed me into the puddle, and I mean within a half second, Scott gave him a look. And Billy looked back like, oh no. And Billy ran away saying, oh shit, and ran down the street. And Scott chased him down the street and got him to the end of the street and started, he wasn't punching him in the face. He was just like beating on his shoulder or whatever. Like, you don't do that. So Scott stood up for me in that moment. And Scott, he was very nice to do that. He didn't have to. He probably liked my sister, but he was sticking up for me. He was 4 years young. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like, you don't bully me like that. And then the other thing that happened with Scott was Scott tried to make me involved with the group, and I was still a little bit shy because everyone was older and tougher than me. And so Scott one time had the in-house, he invited everyone to his house. He had a Blades of Steel tournament.
Oh.
He had a Blades of Steel tournament. And of course, that Blades of Steel was played on a Mock Rider cart because he did that was the old switcheroo. The old rental switcheroo with that. And I looked at it like, wow, okay. That's not ethical to do that. And where did you get that bit driver from? Because I think Blades of Steel was a bit driver game. I think, right? That was a 3-screw, I think.
Yeah.
So that was just all interesting how that happened. So we played Blades of Steel with there was probably easily 8 of us. There could have been 12 of us there. It was every boy within the surrounding blocks. And I remember I was nervous, but I did well. I won my first 2 games. And I was quiet, and it was just sort of thing where he made me feel comfortable.
Sure.
When he didn't have to. He brought me into the fold. Sure. To make me feel comfortable. Maybe because he's making out with my sister. I don't know what my sister was doing with them. Whatever. They're 14, 15-year-old kids. I'm not going to judge either way. They do what they have to do there. But that was just the nicest thing about it. But then, he moved away probably even before I graduated high school. I don't know what happened to the guy. And it's just one of those things where it just stood out because, most of the boys in the block were just either neutral or jerks. Most of the boys in the block weren't nice,
right?
Overtly nice to me. Some did throw me up against those wooden. It was a lot of the kids that weren't local. A lot of kids sometimes to play street hockey. We'll say 6-7 blocks away. That was way out there. That was the outer rim of the universe. They would rough me up a little bit more playing street hockey than they probably should have had to. They would hip check me against the boards or push me around more than they probably should when you're playing street hockey against someone that's 3-4 years younger than you at that point. And Scott never did that. Scott stood up for me. Other kids stood up for me too. One time, the one kid named Gonzalo slashed me in the back of my leg with a hockey stick for no reason. I might have made a little jab at him. I probably did verbally. He slashed me. So then Mark, this other guy named Mark, big guy, Mark, then just slashed him across his legs where the pads were, but he got retaliation right away. So that was good. But sometimes you get roughed up when you're a young boy on the block. Not fist fight, but you get elbowed and I don't know if you have experiences like that in the street where you got roughed up because you were the young kid or not, or it didn't happen with the boys in your block.
No, I was generally I was older. I was of the older kids, so I never really had any of those problems.
Okay, so you were the bully. Were you?
No.
Were you hip checking too much or slashing too much on the street hockey games?
No, I was a pretty mellow kid.
Pretty mellow there.
Yeah.
Well, so thanks to Scott out there for defending my honor. At least there might have been another time. But those are 2 that the puddle one sucked. The puddle one sucked because pants were all wet. 30 degrees, New Jersey. You're talking late March. It's still cold out. There. I think it must have been around Easter. I remember spitting out the chocolate for some reason. It was weird. I do remember that. But we're talking the congregations of 15 kids from ages 8 to 15. That's
right.
That's how the block was there. Everyone knows each other. I pine for those days sometimes just because it was everyone loved each other sometimes. And then Pat gets thrown into a puddle. But you don't mind. You get over that stuff when you're a kid within a couple of days. Billy apologized probably within the next couple of days because he wanted someone to come over and play and beat up in NHL, NHL 92 or whatever, or no, 99. At that point, it was still probably Altered Beast. We were still playing. NHL wasn't even out yet. We're talking about 1990 at that point. But Billy had the Genesis, and you go over, and then you listen to 2 Live Crew, followed by Prince, and then Queen. You got your entire breadth of music. That's why my eclectic taste of music is so developed because of Billy. So Billy wasn't all bad. He was just. He would I think lash out on me sometimes because he hated his parents and his family life, and I was, what I mean?
Yes.
Deep down, probably a good person, but lash out at me. Just don't throw someone in a puddle when it's cold out. That's all. That's kind of mean to do that in the freezing rain.
It is. It's rude.
It's rude. All right. Well, thanks for that Patreon poll topic.